Okay, we'll call to order the City Council meeting for Richmond City Council on Monday, November the 8th, 2021. Madam Clerk, on the minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship. If there can be a motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on October 25th and receive for information the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief dated October 29th.
Okay, moved and seconded. Councillor Steves, I see your hand is up. Is that on this item?
Yes, I just wanted to bring to council's attention the board and brief where Mayor Brody and myself voted against the removal of 660 acres of green zone in Surrey for an industrial park. I just want to congratulate council because I believe we are the greenest city in British Columbia. I circulated Richmond's industrial zone information where we have 17% of the industrial land and 37% of the employees, but we have doubled it by allowing 16 meters buildings instead of 12. It struck me that if the rest of the region adopted that and we doubled the land, we wouldn't have to cover green zone with low-rise warehouses. They're going to have 400 acres of what I would call old-fashioned warehouses in what is right now is farms, forests, and fishery habitats. So I just wanted to pass that on. I'm hoping that when it comes to us, we all get to say something about it, that Richmond may be able to back up what the mayor and I did.
Yeah, just for everybody's reference, the item that Councillor Steves was referring to is on Council page 25, G1.1, which is the South Campbell Heights. We both sat through over 30 delegations and another couple hours of debate on the situation. It ultimately went through, but let's just say that the reaction was very mixed. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I was going to ask that the question what the status was, because we did receive some correspondence from people in Surrey and also the committee that was lobbying to keep it agricultural, and I was just wondering what the status was. You mentioned it went through. Does that mean it went through and goes to a public hearing, or it went through and it's a done deal?
It's a done deal.
Yeah,
it's the type of adjustment that only requires a vote at the table.
Well, it was a pity. The other thing Councillor Steves brought up, and I was going to bring up again, and I continue to bring it up, is about the industrial lands. We have 37% of Metro Vancouver's land. My question is there any push from Metro Vancouver to have the communities continue to redevelop the industrial land for industrial uses, in other words, to upgrade? Much of our industrial land has been evolved over the years, but there is an opportunity. They're single story or they're warehousing, and we could continue to go up and utilize the air there as well as we do when we look for housing. And I'm just wondering which would keep industrial activities within the Lower Mainland and Metro Vancouver. I think it's something that I know it may be it's part of our industrial strategy, but what about Metro Vancouver?
I'll go back to Councillor Steves. He's on the Regional Planning Committee. I would say the short answer is probably not. But Councillor Steves?
Yeah, actually at the planning level we've adopted, Richmond has done, and Richmond is the only one that has done it. And that's what's really annoying. The rest of the region is simply going ahead with what I call a flat earth policy, no change. And in fact, I accused them at the vote the other night that they're jeopardizing what we're doing by opening up green space and eventually go to farmland and everything else as they keep sprawling the industry. And we never will get people to build higher and more densified buildings. The housing in the region we've densified for years, but we just can't seem to get the idea across that we could densify industrial use as well.
Well, we can keep pushing for it. And the other thing, Your Worship, it was interesting. I'm not sure you were Harold was on the Water Committee on page 32, the reduction from 2 days a week to 1 day a week in stage one, and then Stage 2 ban both residential lawn watering. And I guess my question is, to you or staff, did we not save immensely on our restriction this year in terms of watering? Almost 1 million liters, somewhere in that neighborhood?
As the chair of the Water Committee at Metro Vancouver, I'll take a stab at that. Yeah, I think what our statistics that we talk about, it's in one of the reports tonight, since 2003, largely because of water metering.
Right.
We've grown 26% and our water usage has gone down 12 from those days. So you can see the effect of it all. I'm sure they're tired of hearing from Councillor Steves and me about water metering. It is absolutely incredible to me that some of the cities, they'll argue with you about the benefits of water metering, and you know, how many water meters do you find in Vancouver, Burnaby, Coquitlam, all these major centers, and they're just absolutely oblivious to the idea. So I think we're setting a good example, but that's the way it is.
Thank you for that, but I guess also we should thank and I remember voting for that when we put it in, we thank the people of Richmond that are foresight to accept the water meters and go ahead with it. And as you say, the proof is in the pudding. We've proven it. We're doing it. They're doing it. And thank you, Richmond.
Yeah, and of course, not to try and foreshadow what's coming tonight with the utility budget.
Right.
We're putting a lot of extra money to get as many of the multifamily dwellings on board as possible.
Good. Thank you.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. On our Council 38, under E1.2, expression of interest, round 2, identifying member jurisdiction lands for Metro Vancouver Housing Affordable Rental Housing Development. They said the current round of the expression of interest is now accepting submissions, and I'm just wondering, so perhaps through you to our staff, are we submitting a submission? I know, you know, affordable housing is something that is a priority for this council. We've talked about the need for you know, Metro Vancouver to step up to the plate, and, you know, they've identified their plan. I know Councillor McNulty is on that committee, but just wondering, have we submitted something to this?
We submitted for round 1.
For round 1, yes.
And weren't successful.
That's correct.
Maybe I could ask staff, I know that we are making a submission on this, but is this coming through council, or do we have the necessary permission and support of council?
Through your worship, to Councillor McPhail, there is a closed report coming to council later this month.
All right, thank you. Glad to hear we'll be, you know, taking the opportunity to put a submission in. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, so we'll call the question then on the minutes. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Madam Clerk, any agenda additions or deletions?
None, Your Worship.
All right, that brings us to the various appointments that are made. Some of them are made by council resolution on my recommendation. Others I make unilaterally. And so what I'm going to say is that this year I'm going to group the recommendations together. Each group, I'm going to ask for just one resolution per group, because there's very few changes that I am recommending. So we have the appointment of council members to external organizations. To the Richmond Olympic Oval would be Councillor Liu, and the appointment of council rep and alternate to the Stevenson Harbour Authority until November 2022 would be Councillor Steves, with the alternate as Councillor Day. May I have that motion? Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Moving to the standing committees, I've made slight adjustments on the standing committees, so I'll simply read them out. Community Safety Committee will be chaired by Councillor McPhail, Vice Chair Day, and then also joining them will be Councillors McNulty, Hobbs, Liu, and Steves. Now, for anybody listening, these will go onto the website. These, for the media, you can get copies of all this from the city if you wish. Now, the Finance Committee I will chair, it involves all members of council, as does the General Purposes Committee. Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Committee will be the same. Councillor Steves will chair it. Vice chair by Councillor Wolf, joined by Councillor Au, McNulty, and McPhail. The Planning Committee will be chaired by Councillor McNulty. Vice Chair by Councillor Liu, joined by Councillors Day, Au, Steves, and Hobbs. And finally, the Public Works and Transportation Committee will be chaired by Councillor Au, Vice Chair Councillor Liu, joined by Councillors Hobbs, McPhail, and Wolf. Then we get to the appointment of members of council and their alternates as liaison to the city advisory committees and the organizations. For the Committee on the Environment is Councillor Wolf. The Child Care Development Advisory Committee is Councillor Day. The Council School Board Liaison Committee is Councillors Hobbs and Liu. And by the way, these are all the same as last year. Economic Advisory Committee is Councillors Au and Liu. The Heritage Commission is Councillor Wolf. Minru Center for Active Living Program Committee is Councillor Au. The Richmond Center for Disability is Councillor Hobbs. Richmond Chamber of Commerce is Councillor Liu. The RCSAC, Richmond Community Services Advisory Committee, is Councillor McNulty. Richmond Food Security and Agricultural Advisory Committee is Councillor Steves. Richmond Intercultural Advisory Committee, Councillor McPhail. The Public Art Advisory Committee is Councillor Steves. The Sister City Advisory Committee is Councillor Hobbs. Sports Council is Councillor McNulty. Richmond Sports Wall of Fame Nominating Committee is Councillor Steves. Seniors Advisory Committee, Councillor Day. The Stevenson Historic Sites Building Committee is Councillors McNulty and Steves. And finally, Vancouver Coastal Health, the Richmond Health Service Local Governance Liaison Group is Councillor Au. May I have a motion accordingly? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I was just wondering if you could explain the criteria for some of these decisions, because I can't help but look at the Planning Committee and wonder why, when you have an experienced councillor with 3 years, you're not putting him on, whereas you have a councillor, with no respect to Councillor Hobbs, who only has 3 months. I'm just wondering what your criteria was, Mayor Brody.
Well, first of all, we have passed the standing committees. And secondly, the criteria is very extensive, complex, and frankly, well thought out. So we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Moving to the members of council as liaison to community associations. Richmond Arenas is Councillor Wolf. The City Center Community Association is Councillor Hobbs. East Richmond Community Association is Councillor Day. Hamilton Community Association is Councillor Wolf. Richmond Art Gallery Association is Councillor Day. Richmond Fitness and Wellness Association is Councillor Day. The Sea Island Community Association is Councillor Steves. Southam Community Association is Councillor McNulty. Thompson Community Association is Councillor Au. And West Richmond Community Association is Councillor McPhail. And by the way, those are all continuations of what was the case in the past. So may I have a motion accordingly? Moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we have the city council representatives to the city boards. Again, there's been no changes here. The Aquatic Services is Councillor Liu. Museum Society is Councillor Wolf. The Gateway Theatre Society is Councillor Au. The Richmond Public Library Board is Councillor McPhail. May I have a motion accordingly? Moved and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then we have the appointment of members of council as liaison to various societies. And again, there is no change here. Britannia Heritage Shipyard Society is Councillor Steves. Gulf of Georgia Cannery is Councillor Au. London Heritage Farm is Councillor Hobbs. Minru Senior Society is Councillor Hobbs. Richmond Nature Park Society is Councillor Wolf. The Stevenson Community Society is Councillor Liu, and the Stevenson Historical Society is Councillor McNulty. May I have a motion accordingly? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Then we have the appointment of the Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel for Local Area Services, and the recommendation is that the members of the Public Works and Transportation Committee be appointed as the Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel for Local Area Services until November 9, 2022. May I have a motion? Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And the last item are the acting mayors. There's slight change from last year on this. From now till mid-December is Councillor Wolf. December 16th to January 31st, 2022 is Councillor McNulty. February 1st to March 15th is Councillor Day. March 16th to April 30th is Councillor McPhail. May 1st to June 15th is Councillor Au. June 16th to July 31st is Councillor Hobbs. August 1st to September 15th is Councillor Steves. And September 16th to November 7th, 2022 is Councillor Liu. May I have a motion accordingly? Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We have no delegations, so we don't have to resolve to go into committee of the whole. That brings us to the consent agenda. The items, there's just a few of them. There's the receipt of the committee minutes, the Stevenson Heritage Interpretive Framework, the Stevenson Museum and Post Office Visitor Experience Improvements, Recreation and Sports Strategy for 2019 to 2024, the progress update, amendments to the council procedure bylaw, electronic meetings and electronic participation, 2022 district energy utility rates. Then we have land use applications for first reading. There's just one of them. That goes to public hearing November 15th. It's for 2351 Simpson Road, a zoning text amendment to Industrial Park, the IB1 zone. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? Moved and seconded. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting the items on the consent agenda and just wish to speak to two. Number 15, Stevenson Heritage Interpretive Framework. Thank you to staff for this tremendous report and proposed draft interpretive framework. The framework was developed through an integrated planning process in collaboration with community partners and will guide telling the stories of Stevenson at different heritage sites and locations throughout the area. The framework will guide interpretation in a more holistic manner and inform future site planning, exhibit development, signage, conservation-related projects, and programs at city-owned heritage sites. 8 heritage themes are identified in the report, as well as 3 interpretive themes and 4 central stories. If endorsed tonight, staff will circulate the framework to seek stakeholder and public feedback. The original referral dates back 2 years ago, and I believe the document and framework proposed tonight was worth the wait. I look forward to the next phase of public consultation and the final plan, and through you, Your Worship, to staff, what is the timeline of the next phase of public consultation?
Through Your Worship to Councillor McPhail, we will be starting further consultation upon endorsement by council, and expect to do that throughout spring, early 2022 and into spring.
Great, thanks very much. And item number 16, the Stevenson Museum and Post Office Visitor Experience Improvements. The Stevenson Museum and Post Office have been a valued hub in the heart of Stevenson Village since 1979. And we all know that Tourism Richmond is leaving the facility early next year, and there is the opportunity to change how the space in the North Bank building is going to be used going forward. And as a result of this change, and combined with the outcomes of a thorough public consultation process and extensive discussions with the Stevenson Historical Society, the staff recommendation proposed in this report includes one-time capital costs of $354,000, which will come through our capital budget later this year. And that will be to design and construct changes which will provide space for pop-up artists, craftspeople, and author displays, and also reconfigure the rear space for use by local community groups, historical displays, and staging for school programs and walking tours. So these changes are consistent with the direction in the Steveston Heritage Interpretive Plan, and I think this is a really well thought out multi-year plan which will enhance and unify the heritage experience. And we know we have a goal of encouraging more locals year-round and ensuring visitors understand the cultural significance of the Steveston Museum and Post Office in the village. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okey-doke. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll be supporting everything on there. I just want to make a couple comments on three of them. Councillor McPhail actually was quite elegant on the interpretive. And I'm going to support the interpretive, and where the only additional comments I make is I thank staff for the report. It's a great report in there. But I think residents need to embrace history and to understand where we came from. And that's something that I believe the interpretation and the stories that are going to be set up will do. And I think we do a good job, but we need to do more and more of it. Things just didn't happen, they did evolve. And I would like to lead into the museum and post office, Your Worship. They're not just a museum and post office. I think if one knows the history of the 1905 Great Northern Bank, and it's there in its original form as it was then, it's extremely important, and we're utilizing it. But also the museum, Your Worship, is the offshoot of the Fishing Alliance of the day that embraced the first Medicare in Canada in that building, and just up the road on number 1, where they charged $2 a year, and they had a hospital back in 1896 at the Phoenix Cannery, and then in 1900 that partial building was built, and it was open to all. So I think we have to understand the significance of it, and the fact that we are investing in our history book, and we're investing, in my opinions, not only that for the use that we're using it, and I think it's a very creative use, but we don't want to lose it. And I think it's extremely important that, again, we embrace it. You know, people say, well, why are we doing it? But in terms of having the post office there, it is amazing the number of people that utilize that post office and feel that this is it is part of the community and would never like to see it go. The post stamp, and Harold will have this, is his great, I guess it'll be his great uncle, on May 1st, 1890, in the afternoon, took the hammer and hammered the first postmark for the post office in Steveston. It's the longest serving post office and continuous post office in Canada. It used to be Peggy's Cove, but now it's there. And so I think these are investments that I think are extremely important, Your Worship, that we continue to have them and continue to make it a place of destination. The other thing, Your Worship, as we were talking earlier, is the utility budgets. And I want to thank staff.
That's not on the consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll, with that then, Your Worship, I'll wait, and I did want to make a brief comment on the utility budget, so thanks very much.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few comments on 3 of the items. As with the last 2 councillors spoke on, item number 15 and 16 are very interconnected items. Just to clarify for the public, the first item number 15 there, the framework is the draft, and we heard there's the next phase coming to kind of finalize it. And in the report of item number 16, it refers to the framework, and it says that the changes considered here for the museum and post office are consistent with the direction established in that interpretive framework draft. So it's great that these 2 items came together, and I recently observed more than the rest on council as these were presented to the Heritage Commission, of which I'm the council liaison for. So I heard some of the feedback and presentations from staff in both of these areas and was very pleased to hear it. And also just to clarify for public in summarizing, the Steveston Museum post office looks at improvements and ongoing service. So improvements, as was just referred to as valuable for the historic nature and significance of these buildings, come to the tune of about $354,000. So not an easy amount to part with, but for definite good outcome in this regard. And I'll leave it at that. Many other things were said, except another connection between the two and a good summary table for the public is in our council package, CNCL page 63, which gives the summary table of how the Steveston Museum and Post Office fit in to the interpretive themes of the framework. And it is actually one of the three primary locations for the community life theme. And there's 4 themes. You can read up on the other ones. Finally, the last item on the consent agenda, which I'll be in support of, is in support of all of them, but the other one I'll speak to is item number 17 on the Recreation and Sports Strategy Progress Update. Noting in the report that of all the areas that are significant in the strategy, the one that had the least amount of key highlights is one that was a bit, I spoke a lot of at the Parks and Rec Committee. It's the one called Connectedness to Nature. And since that meeting, I did hear from staff on a long list of ways beyond what's in this progress update today that the city has done and is doing in regards to connectedness to nature. So it's great programming work, it's great infrastructure work, but definitely an area that I've heard and experienced as one that's definitely in need and perhaps a higher priority for the remainder of this term of progress. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I too will be supporting everything on today's consent agenda. I just wanted to comment on just a couple of things. The first one I wanted to mention was to the Steveston Heritage Interpretive Framework. I'd like to thank the stakeholders for their work, and they participated in a long workshop. They've done a lot of work. The Britannia Shipyards National Historic Site Society, the London Heritage Farm Society, the Steveston Historical Society, the Gulf of Georgia Cannery Society, the Scotch Pond Cooperative, and Tourism Richmond. So thank you all to the stakeholders for that. And as I believe Councillor McPhail already mentioned, this will be going out to public feedback. And so I thank you in advance, all the public that are going to weigh in on this, because I think that this is important to help us establish the key themes and the stories that are going to be told and guide the decisions on how we are going to do all this. And so thank you in advance for all the support on this. I also want to mention the Recreation Support Strategy 2019 to 2024. This is a guiding principle. This is something that helps us develop what we're doing in sport and recreation here in the city. And I'm really hoping that in the next few years, we can really build off the success of our Olympic gold medal soccer team and build our soccer players a proper field house out at Hugh Boyd. I think this will help people to participate, to develop, and to compete in the beautiful game. And so I'm hoping that council get behind this project and really support this as we move forward. I'd also like to point out on CNCL 154 of the package, it talks about the direct support to residents through KidSport and our recreation fee subsidy program. There was a definite reduction in how many people received these subsidies during COVID because of the closure of facilities and everything else. And, you know, my fear is that possibly our more vulnerable people were more negatively affected by COVID and not able to participate in these things, and we're more isolated, our seniors, our children. And so as we move back and we get through this COVID, hopefully everyone can come out and continue supporting KidSport and support all the recreation facilities that we have to make sure that everyone's getting out and able to participate and be part of the recreation, both in our facilities, specific facilities, and out in nature. And finally, number 18, we have amendments to the council procedure bylaw for electronic meetings and electronic participation. This really improves the access for both council and the public to attend meetings. So despite any health or family or other issues that people may have, they'll still be able to participate fully in the council meetings if they're able to get online and participate electronically. You know, I am reminded of, you know, there was someone having to come and work with one of the developers, and they were basically hiding in their car because they had a child at home who had had a heart condition and had recently had open heart surgery, and his wife was just, the family was just terrified that he might come in, get COVID, and bring it back to the family. And so the ability to participate electronically, I think it opens up to a lot of people and makes it far more practical for people to be part of this process. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'm in support of the consent agenda as well, and much has been said very well, but I do want to comment on the interpretive plan and just say that I really enjoyed the work that was done. It was very thorough. The themes, the stories, the sub-stories are worth reading. The past in our present, I think, is quite clever, and I like the emphasis on connecting to both the river and the diversity in our community. So the framework, it goes towards enhancing our historic sites, and it will have a positive impact on the community in many ways. And I would like staff just to comment quickly, if they could, on the impact it has on the local business community. I know consultation is going to take place in the future, but I also know that consultation has taken place in many ways already leading up to this. So if you just comment on that, because it's not just a matter of laying out $350-something thousand. These have real impacts on local business, and often you can cite studies that demonstrate there is a return on the investment to the local business community. So I don't know if you have a quick comment on that.
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, the way that the heritage sites really contribute to the local business community is providing excellent experiences and attracting visitors, both local and from afar, to come to Steveston and spend time in Steveston. And I think the successful implementation of this framework will create quality experiences, as well as link the sites to encourage people to spend more time in the village and experience a lot of different places.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I'm also very much looking forward to seeing how this helps promote the Fishermen's Benevolent building and society, because right now, just because of how it's situated in the layout, I think it's probably a little bit under-recognized, and I think there's things that can be done there. And the last question, through your worship, is just pre-COVID, I believe we were starting to see a very productive working relationship with Tourism Richmond, and their assistance in this initiative and other initiatives in Richmond through cross-promotional activities and that type of thing could be very good. So can you comment on what that relationship has been, especially pre-COVID, and probably beginning to build again now in relation to promoting our historical sites?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, Tourism Richmond was very much involved in the development of the interpretive framework, as well as the plan for the Steveston Museum. And the framework aligns with the Steveston Tourism Plan that was presented by Tourism Richmond in 2019. And the interpretive plan framework also coordinates with the Destination Development Plan that really speaks to how the Steveston heritage sites will be marketed to a tourism audience. And so these two plans, the interpretive framework and the Destination Development Plan, really work hand in hand. What are the products we are developing, and how are we marketing those products to a tourism audience? And we certainly work very closely with Tourism Richmond to make all of that happen.
That's excellent. Thank you.
All righty, Councillor Au.
Your worship, I'm going to support everything on the consent agenda, but I would like to comment on the 3 items and have some questions. First of all, item 15, Steveston Heritage Interpretive Framework. I'm very happy with the report and also the recommendations, especially on page 58. I've seen the themes that would be included in further consultation, and most likely this will be the emphasis of the future programs. What I like about this in particular is the story of the First Nations and the changing relations in the area. I think this is an item which has been forgotten for a long time. And also, as the last one, the story of Steveston as an international port. And again, I think, we have overlooked the importance of the port as an international port. And on CNCL page 57, I have a question. Now, I look at those interpretive locations. However, I think there should be two more locations that's worth mentioning. First is the Chinese House. So if we are going to interpret the history of Richmond or in Stevenson, I think that the Chinese pioneers did play a role. And so I just wonder why the Chinese House is not being listed. And the other is the First Nations House. And again, I know that it's not fully restored, but I think it also has much heritage value in terms of talking about the history and the heritage of Stevenson. So why are these two places not being listed?
Through your worship to Councillor Al, those locations are considered part of the Britannia Shipyard National Historic Site. They are certainly included in the interpretation, and I think they play a big role in specifically addressing the theme that you were speaking to here.
Okay, good. So as long as they are not being forgotten. And then on page CNCF 66, under the heading of farming, and again, I'm very happy that we have stories to tell on the history of farming in the area. And in particular, in the second last paragraph, it mentions about the Chinese market gardens, etc. So, and I would like to have more stories about the Chinese farms because I love listening to Councillor Steves talking about how he worked with the Chinese farmers, when he was younger, and how the agricultural products were being sent to Vancouver to support the people there. So I think this is a very important aspect of the area as well. And related to 15, of course, is 16, Stevenson Museum and Post Office Visitors Experience. Again, I think this is, I'm supportive of the recommendation. And as we can see from the common themes being summarized on page 76, again, I think there are no surprises, I think, and those 6 themes being included on the middle of the page, I think, common experience. I think many of us share the same kind of opinion on those themes. Especially, I think the museum and the post office are important assets of Stevenson's heritage and history. And personally, I like to visit the museum and the post office very much. And also for the provision of visitors information service, I think it's very important, and I'm happy to see that it's also included on the list. I know that the information service for tourists is not only serving Stevenson. I think it will also provide information for the other parts of the city to the visitors, so that they can be recommended for other places to visit in Richmond. So I think the post office, the museum, and also the visitors information services are very important. And finally, I have questions on item number 17, recreation and sports strategy 2019 to 2024. I'm very happy to have the report, and especially 2020 has been a very challenging year. 2021 also because of the COVID-19. But I'm very happy to see that we have overcome many of the challenges with success. I'm particularly delighted to see the comments on CNCL page 179, connecting preschoolers with nature. I think this is a very important theme because we know that if we can encourage kids to be active and to fall in love with nature, I think that would become a lifelong habit, and they would remain active for the rest of their life. So I think this is an important aspect of our strategy. I have questions on a few things. Okay. on page 194, I noticed that there's a few things that are scheduled to begin in year 3. For example, item 7 and item 8, that's working with the school district to embed physical literacy mentors in schools to support teachers and assist schools to develop a physical literacy curriculum. And also number 8 works with the school district to offer workshops on physical literacy at elementary school professional days. So I just want to know, has any progress been made when we say this kind of activities would begin in year 3? Does it mean this year or the year to come?
Through the mayor to Councillor Au, we will be working with the school district to find the appropriate time to move those initiatives forward. We certainly have had conversations with them. I just can't say that we've fully implemented those initiatives as they stand, but they continue to be discussed. Okay, so progress in the making.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Please carry on.
Okay, my second question is about, now we know that there are new types of sports activities emerging in the community. You know, we have new kinds of sports, and also some of them are very successful. Like we have athletes earning or winning international titles, such as whistling, race walk, things like that. So how is the city going to support those rising athletes or, you know, people who are engaging in new kind of sports? So what is the strategy of the city to support those kinds of activities and also those rising athletes?
Through the mayor to Councillor Au, we work closely with Sports Council to work with new sports as they emerge. And an example would be in recent, I think it's within the last 18 months, we have a new pickleball association that has formed in the city of Richmond due to the rise in interest in pickleball. And so we continue to monitor new and emerging sports, and we'll work with groups as they come together.
And how about those rising stars? So those emerging athletes.
Through the mayor to Councillor Au, any opportunity where we have to spotlight and to work with athletes, we do try to support them. For example, we have a program that's in partnership with Sport BC, where carded athletes have access to our community facilities to work out, to exercise at no fee as a way of supporting them to participate in their sport. So there's a number of initiatives like that that we work on to support athletes throughout the community.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you could have added to that many, many things, Elizabeth. I think the two that come to my mind are all the subsidies that we get in give in the recreational field, plus how we give a yearly grant and work with Kids Sport to make sure that people have the resources they need to participate in their chosen endeavor. Councillor Steves.
Thanks. Councillor McNulty raised the issue of the original post office. When the Seaston Post Office closed in 1972, the head postmaster for BC actually gave me a whole pile of the original equipment that was there, put in there when the post office opened in 1890. And I'm hoping with this new change and more emphasis in the post office, we'll be able to put those things on display. I've got weigh scales and even a postman's bag that's made out of leather that's so hard that right now it's like it's made out of wood. But anyway, a lot of artifacts like that. I'm also pleased that our staff is really producing on all fronts. I've been collecting stuff for years, hoping they would go in some of our museums. The staff was around a week or two ago and picked up a whole pile of stuff at the London Farm. They're setting up displays. They're showing what agriculture was like pre-1940, and of course I had a lot of stuff that I've collected up for that. And so I'm really pleased with both the two reports we got in the agenda tonight. It's my last year in council, and I think I'm going to have a lot of fun. So I'd like to thank staff for that, and council for moving ahead with this, and the whole community coming together to put these programs together. One thing I'd also like to add about the post office, when it shut down in 1972, people actually had a petition. Half the town signed a petition against shutting the post office down. It was being shut down so they would get door-to-door delivery. And they actually preferred to actually go to the post office and get their mail because it was the center meeting place. Everybody knew everybody else, and they went to the post office and got their mail, and all your friends were there. And so that was, I think it was around 1974 or so that Richmond got a joint provincial federal neighborhood improvement grant. And they had a group of 3 people went door to door in Richmond and asked everybody what they wanted. Door to door in Steveston, asked them what they wanted for the neighborhood improvement grant. Half of them said a post office, and half of them said a museum. So council acquired the old bank building, and that's how we got a post office and museum at the same time. And what these reports we've got before us today are carrying on that vision that the community had way back in 1972 and 73. We're carrying it on. We've had a few years where things not much was happening, but it's all coming together in 2021 and 2022. So I'm really pleased with what's happening. And actually, for Councillor Au, I'm putting together all the photographs and stuff I've collected, and I've been scanning. I've got about 200 documents and photographs on the Steveston area scanned already, and I've got a lot more, and documenting them. So I will be documenting the Chinese history, the World War II history, and the various groups that I've got information on. So if you don't see me at meetings sometimes, you know what I'll be doing, because it takes quite a while. I've worked it out with the Richmond Archives, and it'll all be going to the archives. So thank you, everybody. It's looking really, really good, and I'm really pleased with staff that they've come back so quickly and so thoroughly with those 2 reports.
All right, thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Well, I have to echo what Councillor Steve said, and as Councillor Wolf pointed out, item 15, the heritage interpretive framework and the Steveston Museum and Post Office experience are really the framework, and they combine the 2 issues together because they are so interconnected. And as Rebecca Clark, our staff member, pointed out, it's really about pulling the stories together, and boy, we couldn't have a better person to do it than Rebecca. So I'm looking forward to seeing those artifacts, Councillor Steve. That'll be fun. So item number 17 is the recreational sports strategy. One of the things they said in this report, which I was super happy to read, was there's going to be opportunities to empower youth to take leadership on issues that they're passionate about. Well, a mother recently wrote council about her young son who needed to see improvements in the skateboard park. So not only did she contact the city, the staff met with her son at the skateboard park, who then worked together with this young fella to change the skateboard park to make it even better than it was before and address some of the deficiencies. That's exactly the kind of community involvement that we need to make Richmond even better than it already is. Item number 18 is the amendment to the council procedure, which allows electronic meetings, and many of us tonight are electronically coming in. And it does provide opportunities for the public to communicate to council. But we are also open for business, and a lot of people may not realize that. You have a voice, you can come to City Hall, and you can speak to council. Just simply contact our staff, make sure your name is on the list, and of course there'll be criteria like, showing your passport. But yeah, we're open, come on in. Item number 19 is the district utility rates. This is a sea of numbers, so I'm just going to break it down really simply. Some of the rates that Fortis customers are going to see is 5.4%. Some of the rates that Hydro customers are going to see is 2.2%. So we're coming up with a blended rate of 3.7% on average. And in the Oval District, it'll be 4%, and in the city center, it'll be 1%. And the whole idea of having these energy utilities that are amazing, and they reduce our carbon footprint, but is to provide the energy that people need at a cost that they can afford that's fair, and of course, making Richmond a happier, safer, more environmentally friendly place to live. So I'm really excited about these energy corps. I think they're doing amazing jobs, and these fees reflect that good work. Number 20 on, the last on the agenda item is a gentleman who came to us. He's got a commercial property at 2351 Simpson, and he wanted to be able to have a, basically a caretaker suite in this commercial building. And, you know, it's an industrial business park, and it's away from, you know, where the public are at night. And this provides an added level of security for not just his own complex, but for adjoining complexes as well. So we don't normally allow this, but the plan was really well thought out, and it will allow for better security, and I'm glad that we could support this. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. That's it for me.
Just want to clarify the remarks about City Hall being open. City Hall, in fact, is still closed except for restricted activities. One of them, which has been referred to, is the idea of coming and speaking to council. That can be done as long as you go through the regular procedure. There's a certain procedure. Another, for payments and that sort of thing, where people need to settle up with the city, that is also possible. But for the most part, while we're trying to get City Hall open, and hopefully the COVID numbers cooperate with us so that we can do that in the near future, City Hall still is, in fact, closed. So with that, I'm going to call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Brings us to the Finance Committee recommendation. Recommendation is that the 2022 utility budgets as presented in option 2 for water, including option B for university multi-family water metering, option 3 for sewer, option 2 for drainage and diking, option 3 for solid waste and recycling, as outlined in the staff report, as set out in the agenda, be approved as the basis for establishing the 2022 utility rates and included in the consolidated 5-year financial plan bylaw. And secondly, that the general manager, engineering and public works be authorized to negotiate and execute on behalf of the city the municipal recycling depot services agreement with the Greater Vancouver Sewerage and Drainage District as outlined in the staff report. So I'll move it as set out in the recommendation. So that's moved and seconded. I just want to give just kind of a general introduction so people will know what we're talking about here, or be closer to it anyway. We have a number of budgets in the city that we pass each year. We have the operating budget, which is what most people think of. We have the capital budgets, and we also have the utility budgets. Now, this is the utility budget. We expect in the next couple of weeks that we're also going to be bringing in the operating and the capital budgets, at least the first cut of those. Now, this budget, this set of budgets is for utilities, water, sewer, drainage, diking, and solid waste. Those are the basic utilities that we're talking about. And the biggest component of the charges in those utilities is what Metro Vancouver charges, which is mostly based on user fees. Now, as we go through the report to the various components, there are non-discretionary type of increases where costs have simply gone up and we have no choice, but it's a basic service and we have to recognize that increase. So for water, there is the non-discretionary increase. Then we're putting extra money, I think it's $1.5 million, $1.8 million to the residential water metering program so that we can more quickly get the multifamily dwellings fully water metered. Now, single-family dwellings are pretty much 100%, but we need the multifamily to match that kind of a percentage. There's also a couple of staff positions which are coming at no cost, and in order to reduce the amount of the increment this year, it's recommended that $700,000 be taken as stabilizing funds to stabilize the rates. The next one is the sewer budget. And again, we have the non-discretionary increases. There is a position, there's a specific process if you want to add a position. This one is a technical position where they need the expertise, the extra expertise in a particularly compelling way. And also they have considered whether there should be rate stabilization, and they said in this case, probably the answer is no. Then we have drainage and diking, where the main increase for drainage and diking is the $1 million, which is being transferred over from the operating budgets over to where it's more appropriate to have it in this drainage and diking utility. And finally, we have the solid waste. Solid waste, again, there are the base level services. Because Vancouver Coastal Health has gotten out of certain businesses, certain tasks, mosquito and rodent control, for instance, we need someone for that. But that will be a matter of realigning the budgets from paying to Vancouver Coastal Health over to paying our own. And also the question of rate stabilization comes up. The recommendation in option 3 is that we would take $300,000 towards rate stabilization. Now, there's a couple of very interesting projects that are recommended. First of all, we have a grease problem in the city of Richmond. There's too much grease that goes down the sewers and the drains. And so for the restaurants, we have the grease inspectors and, grease traps, and there's careful attention to grease. But really, the residential sector hasn't kept up with that. So we want to have a multifamily grease collection pilot project to try and encourage people to, within the project, to take their grease and to deal with it more appropriately. And also, the suggestion is that we would have 2 what are called C bins, which are devices which will be in Steveston, and those C bins will collect some of the debris that comes down the river. So again, we'll see how that goes, and that's working with the Steveston Harbor Authority on that particular project. Now, the net increase, it's hard to say what the net increase is because it depends on so many different factors for the residents, whether you're on a water meter, whether you're not on the meter, the kind of premises that you have. Sometimes there's user fees, so the more you use, the more you're going to pay, those kinds of things. So all in all, I'm going to support this utility budget, and I'll look forward to the discussion on it. Councillor Wolf.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Just a few comments on this. I don't need to have any further questions. Back in April of this year, I was opposed to the change going from the staff recommendation in regards to the drainage and diking. So the one page of this report that I would direct the public or anyone's attention to would be on our council package, page 270, and it shows the table of flood protection rate options. And what's bolded is option 2, which says it's recommended, which it is by staff now, but that's a result of council denying what was previously recommended, which if you look to the right, option 3, would get us to achieve our 2031 target rate, so that we're collecting the amount to be able to deal with the need for raising dikes in the future. It might not be that we need it now, and maybe delaying it can happen, but to go away from a staff recommendation with no other reason other than council making an amendment to save money somewhere in this, which has so little impact or ability for us to impact it. So much of it, as we've said, is done by Metro Vancouver, and I've attended the meetings where they discuss why all these rates are going up as high as they are, and they make sense. If you just look back to another part of this item, were suggesting that we increase the rate for sewer, and staff has said that it's not actually needed, but we know these major projects are coming, and the cost for the Annacis Island project, the North Vancouver project, and the Iona project are going to really hit. So bring the rates up now so we can buffer it. Well, that's what I feel we should have followed staff's recommendation to do that for the flood protection. Just very briefly here, the target rate is intended to deal with rising water levels, be it drainage down the Fraser River or storm surges from the ocean side. And just this past year, since we had staff recommending option 3, we've had the heat dome. We just had a tornado on the weekend just off the coast of Richmond. So clearly, things are showing that Richmond is not going to be left out of large-scale climate-related events in the future. And I think it would be wise to go ahead with the option that was presented to us, and I couldn't get any support to amend it, so I'll be opposing the whole block because, again, I've been told I can't separate just the one. I'm really pleased with all the other aspects of everything in this report and all the great projects that the mayor just outlined that will be part of this. But when people around the world, especially in Glasgow right now, are saying what they are, and we're sitting here not making the follow-up action, that's what's keeping me opposed to this one. Thanks.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. It was mentioned earlier about a sea of information and numbers, and this report was another one, but I mean that in a good way. It was very comprehensive with lots of information. So just a comment and a couple questions, if I could. First of all, some of the numbers are going up quite high when you look at the things that we can't control, which has already been mentioned. So I do want to just point out that, for instance, Metro Vancouver's costs have gone up quite a bit. And if you compare, for instance, our sewer utility rate, I believe I'm looking at this correctly, from 2006 to 2022, I mean, Metro Vancouver's share used to be 53% of that budget, and now it's 66%. So you can see how that's going up. And in the report, I was actually quite heartened to see that in terms of Richmond's operating expenditures, for water, for instance, on page 265, those expenses have been kept over the last 4 years, I think from 2017 to 0.8%. And if you look at the sewer costs for the city's operating expenditures from 2017 to 2021, so for 4 years, that's been kept to 1.8%. Now, both of those are below the cost of living. So I think the city has earned some credit there, and staff are the ones that have earned that credit. Now, that's not to say that things won't go up, but when you hear some of the comments, like Councillor Wolf's about climate change, there are some very important infrastructure things that we have to do. So one question, through your worship, is if staff could just briefly comment on, in layman's terms, on some of the major projects and the impact of aging infrastructure and the combination of that plus increased demand through more buildings, more people, and the issues and the impact that that has on the cost of these projects, because I think it's significant and I think people understand that's happening. But if you could just give a couple, no pun intended, concrete examples.
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, the city has quite extensive infrastructure for water, sanitary, drainage and roads, over $1 billion worth of these assets. And a lot of them will be coming up to be replaced because of condition and due to age over the coming decades. So that's part of what these utility rates and budgets are used to put the city into a good position to be able to replace those assets when they're due to be replaced in order to maintain a high level of service for residents and businesses.
Sure, and just one more, if I could. Because if you look at major infrastructure, much of it in Richmond was probably built out in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s when we went through a lot of expansion in terms of neighborhoods being built. And so a water main life, for instance, can be built to different standards And some of those standards, I believe, can be in 100 years, some can be less. So the infrastructure that was built, and this isn't to attach blame to anybody, but what was the average lifespan for a major infrastructure for sewers and waters built to in the 50s and 60s? And that goes towards explaining why we're having to replace it now. And also, what is the engineering build out that we're doing now? Is it a 100-year lifespan?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, back when the city was first developed and built out, the pipes that were generally used at that period of time were asbestos cement pipes, so AC pipes. Their lifespan is certainly not as good as some of the newer materials that our technology has advanced to this date. Those pipes generally looking at 50-year time frame for that lifespan, whereas the newer materials that we use today, which includes PVC, those ones that could extend up to 75 years.
Right. So it's just a very important note to make in terms of the challenges we face, that replacing infrastructure and the new construction that we're having, this is going to be a price of doing business. And the city has actually kept a lot of their operating expenditures to a very reasonable level. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Just following along that line, I think it needs to be put out to the public here that we've worked very, very hard, and staff have worked hard to reduce as much of the cost from Metro Vancouver. As we were mentioning earlier, Richmond does things a lot differently. We have replacement funds. We have a number of funds and utilities set aside, which mitigate some of the costing. And we've been able to add monies into that each year, Your Worship, to keep it down. And I think that's something that needs to be recognized. But as following up what Councillor Hobbs said with infrastructure, the Gilbert Road sewage plant was built in the 80s. And Iona, which also services, is going to be replaced. And obviously those are necessities within our community, so that what we're doing is at least keeping the rates down, but eventually we'll be contributing to them. And I can recall, Your Worship, when we had to filter our water, and we had brown water showers when the water tables rose and the reservoirs got dirty and what have you. And now our staff work and we got 99.9% clear water with no turbidity in it and whatever. And thank you very much to our water department. So those are some of the benefits that we have. And I don't like to see any increase for taxes and what have you. But I think Mr. Ho was starting to say the size of the infrastructures Richmond has grown since we were talking before, and I think it's important. And you mentioned earlier the Grease project. It's cost us thousands of dollars. I believe we had to redo Gilbert Road just because of grease issues at one time that cost us. And I'm very happy, though, Your Worship, in here to see somebody from the environment to deal with the mosquito and the rodent aspect for the community. You know, Vancouver Coastal Health did not spend as much time, and Metro Vancouver didn't have the resources in these areas, and I'm glad we'll be taking it on, and I think it will only benefit us. The interesting thing, Your Worship, when I look at the cost per day for our flood protection, and what we're doing on that is it's 42 cents. On it, and obviously we're surrounded by Sea Island and Lulu Island, surrounded by water. We have, I believe it's 43 pump stations putting water out and helping us in our drainage. And when I look at the total amount, really it's $3.89 a day, and it's I'm not justifying the amount. I wish we could reduce it even further, but I think it's investment in our quality of life here in Richmond, And I think we have to go with it. The one warning, Your Worship, has to be brought out at this time is Metro Vancouver's costs are not going down. In some areas next year, they're going to be doubled. In the year after, they can be tripled. And I hope we can mitigate as much as we can. But the other thing, is just as important, Your Worship, we continue to put monies into those funds to reduce it. And when we add the 1% tax, for example, to utilities and to infrastructure and what have you, it mitigates and allows us to do a lot more. I'd like to see what Vancouver's water bill is or another community's water bill is compared to ours. I think it would be much higher, and I'm not justifying it, but I'm trying to provide a context of what we're doing in terms of it. And as you mentioned earlier, there's not much we can do with some of the costs. We've reduced it as much as we can, and I think staff in all 4 categories have done a good job and brought us a good plan forward. So I think on behalf for the people of Richmond, this is the best we can do, and I don't think we can not support what we've got on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. A lot has been said, so I'll try and be brief. Thank you to staff for this detailed report. I appreciated the highlights on the staff review process. As we know, and as has been said, Metro Vancouver rates are going up approximately 3.5% this year over last year. So to the regional district, whom oversees our water supply and sewer systems. This works out to approximately a $21 increase over last year's fees. Many of us attended Council of Councils on October 23rd, where we saw the Metro Vancouver 2022-2026 financial plan overview. We learned that the original rate hike had been projected to be about 6.4%, but the board and staff worked really hard and looked at all the tools and regional priorities to bring the rate increase down to that 3.5%. But as has been mentioned, Metro Vancouver predicts a larger increase over the next 5 years, and that is why the pilot programs mentioned in this report, the proposal to install water meters in multifamily dwellings, the proposed multifamily grease collection, as well as the Seabin River debris collection initiatives are so important. We need to be doing everything that we can to try and control costs on our side of things. So thank you to staff for bringing these initiatives forward, and I look forward to hearing the results in due course. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Howe.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'm going to support the recommendation. I think nobody likes to have increase of utility fees. However, I think for 3 reasons, I think the recommendations are reasonable. For one, most, if not all, of the increase are beyond our control. As being mentioned, it's being imposed onto us. And secondly, on most items, I think residents are paying for what they use. So I think it's also a fair ground. And thirdly, we're already trying our best to reduce or cut down the degree of increase. So we are transferring funds in whatever way we can to reduce the level of increase. And I can also not support the option 4 for the flood protection rate, because it would even make the increase higher. However, I have a question to ask on CNCL page 270. Now, if I compare option 2 and 3, under drainage operations and maintenance, I see that in option 2, the amount is actually smaller than option 3. So can staff explain to me why is this the case? Because if we compare option 2 and 3 on page CNCL 270, I mean, most of the items on option 3 are more expensive than option 2, except this one.
Your Worship, to Councillor Au. So in option 3, it does not include any transfer of the drainage operations and maintenance from the operating budget into the utility.
I see. Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I actually supported this at Finance Committee, but I've had a chance to read this binder of information, and I do have some questions and some concerns. The first one is on water and sewer, water utility rate. And the recommended option is option 2, and then option 1 is not recommended. So the reason one of the reasons that option 2 is more is because it includes 2 positions. So it says zero net operation coordinator and a zero net cost water conservation project manager. So the salary went from $173K to $325K, so just about double. So if we go ahead with option 2, will we have any net reduction in operating costs, given that zero net cost is what this person would be hired to take care of?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the position cost is offset through a contribution from a revenue that we will expect the position to realize through the permit fees.
Okay, so that makes sense. That's one that you can understand. I'm going with that one. The next one that I want to ask about, and I think Councillor Wolf did a very good job of explaining it. I'm not near as eloquent as him. On page 270, option 3 would help us to achieve the 2031 target rates. And I think that that's something really worth thinking about because, I mean, we are in a floodplain and the difference in price is literally $1.30 a year for multifamily units and $2.78 a year for a house. I think we need to go with option 3. It's the right way to go. It's we gotta really think about the environment and how things are changed. And I think you may have all seen the tornado that hit UBC on Sunday and took out a bunch of trees. Climate change is doing crazy things every year, and it seems to me if we're going to be responsible, we would go ahead and go with option 3 on page 270. And then I just want to point out to the taxpayers that there's a chart that compares all the utility rates, all of them, everything we're talking about today, to your budget, your household budget. And it states that the city utility fees represent approximately 15% of the average daily household expenses. That's a pretty low amount. So let's get this right. And so I would like to move that we go with option 3 instead of option 2 on page 270.
Well, you're proposing an amendment?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mayor Brody.
All right, is that seconded? It's seconded by Councillor Wolf. So I've got a question about that of staff. If we go with option 3, and let's see now, option 3 with the to achieving the 2031 target rates, are we going to get any services, any more services by going option 3 any quicker?
Your Worship, there is an increase to the capital infrastructure program amount of over $1 million additional. So we would be able to do more work in that regard.
More work more quickly? Or the same amount of work would be done, you're just kind of stabilizing the rate? John Irving?
Your Worship, yes, Mr. O is correct. I mean, it would add about $1 million to the current 13.5 in that order that we're collecting. And certainly more will allow us to do more in the capital program incrementally. I would add, though, that we have been very successful on the grant side, and we are quite optimistic that with grant applications going forward that Council's just approved, we will get significant dollars through 2022 to support the capital program. So the recommendation that we put before you for option 2 is one we feel is very supportable and will allow us to continue on a solid path forward.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay, on the amendment to go with option 3 instead of option 2 for the flood protection rates, all those in favor? I see Councillor Steves, Day, and Wolf. Those opposed? It's the mayor, Councillors Hobbs, McPhail, just a minute, it all changed around. Au, McNulty, Lou, did I say Hobbs? They're all opposed, so it's defeated. No, the recommendation is on the floor. So, okay, Councillor McPhail. Just a minute. All of a sudden, I've got all these hands that have popped up. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. All right. Councillor Day, you finished?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that we vote on separately so that it's really clear what we're voting for.
Yeah, we all, like so much of this discussion we've had today, we went through this at committee. The answer is you can make what amendments you want, then we vote on the budget, period.
And I'll be not supporting the budget. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, we'll call the question on the motion, the entire motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Day and Councillor Wolf opposed. Then we have the 2022 utility rate amendment bylaws, staff recommendations that we bring in the waterworks and water rates bylaw, the drainage dike and sanitary sewer system bylaw amendment, and the solid waste and recycling regulations as it's set out in the agenda. I would so move. So that's moved. So that's bringing in the actual rates for the various services. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a very brief comment on this one. It ties very closely to the last item, so I don't have too much to say. But on in our package, page 290 is where this bylaw report is. And again, just pointing out, we're the mayor and council, and our strategy, our strategic plan for this term includes section 2.1, continued leadership in addressing climate change. Now, I agree, we're still doing that. We're still a leader, but we're not leading as best we could or as would follow sustainability goals or targets that are set out by experienced individuals like our staff who've worked toward this and have previously recommended to us. So as a result, this is a block vote once again. So I will vote in the opposition. Thanks.
I would just remind council what we just heard from staff is that they believe that we're going to be successful in getting the grants. We're going to be able to have a very formidable plan here, and that their recommendation is we don't need to go with that extra level. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillors Wolf and Day opposed. Okay, that brings us to the public announcements and events. We've got some announcements for appointments which expire in 2023. These come out of the closed meeting. To the Sister City Advisory Committee. As I say, all of these go to the end of December 2023. Alan Chan, Sharon Gill, Joan Page, Sue Tian, Jenny Zhang, Melissa Zhang, Victor Zhou, and David Yang. For the Advisory Design Panel, Alan C. Van Nguyen, Christopher Lee, and Pamela Andrews. For the Advisory Committee on the Environment, Erzbet Institutoritz, Anthony Leung, Samuel McCullough, C.J. Snyder, and Cynthia Zhao. And then for the Board of Variance, the appointments go to 2024, Krista Kinapfel, Aleem Sunderji, and Sheng Xiong. We also want to remind everybody that we are coming upon Remembrance Day this Thursday, November 11th. We remind everybody to take time to honor the men and women who gave their lives to serve and protect our country. We encourage the community to join these important ceremonies virtually through a live stream beginning at 10:30 a.m. and to mark 2 minutes of silence at 11 a.m. The online schedule and other details are posted on the city website, and we're hoping that after we get past this year, that we're going to have the full ceremony out on number 3 Road by the Cenotaph, but it's got to be more limited again this year because of COVID. Then we have National Indigenous Veterans Day. Today, November 8th, marks National Indigenous Veterans Day in Canada. This is a day to acknowledge the important past, present, and future contributions made by First Nations, Inuit, and Métis veterans in service to Canada. And finally, there's a recreation and sports job fair. Richmond offers many exciting opportunities for those interested in working in fitness and recreation at the community associations and societies across the community. A free job fair on Thursday, November 18th from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock p.m. is a chance for anyone 16 and older to learn about the various full-time, part-time, and seasonal positions currently available. The job fair is for those interested in opportunities in fitness, childcare, youth, seniors, and seasonal programs. Registration is actually required. Details are at richmond.ca/register, or give us a telephone call at 604-276-4300. All right, so Madam Clerk, that brings us to bylaws for adoption.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 bylaws for final adoption with no noted opposition.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. We are now adjourned. Thank you.